All right, the bankers are arguing that the financial system is safer today. Is that really the case? And I guess more importantly, will this committee buy it?
Well, yes, it is safer, Alexis, and no, the committee will not buy it. I think there's nothing like a public flogging to get your face on the evening news with a hostile soundbite. So I'm sure there'll be several members of the committee who will be extremely critical of the industry.
Of all these CEOs, one remains standing from the height of the crisis. That is J.P. Morgan's Jamie Dimon. Do you think he's going to face the most questions and perhaps some of this anger from the Dems?
Probably, but he can give it back pretty adroitly. So I think he'll point out, as he should, that all the talk about bailouts for the banks, they paid back every nickel with interest. And I think that'll be pointed out. I think it'll be pointed out that the regulations we got have actually been a plus.
A lot of people are expecting political theater today ahead of the 2020 presidential election. But do you think that anything could actually come of these hearings? Might we see some policy revelations come out of it?
Well, that's the key, isn't it? Could this actually lead to legislation? I think the answer is no. I think there's headline risk. There's headline risk for this industry, for the drug companies, maybe even a little legislative risk for the drug companies. But no, I think in terms of any kind of new punitive legislation affecting the banks, I don't see it, nor do I see any legislation that would ease regulations on the banks.
President Trump has had this sort of us versus them mentality throughout his time in office. But at the end of the day, isn't the Trump administration proving to be increasingly friendly to Wall Street and the big banks?
Yeah, I think so. I think the big exception, obviously, is the drug industry. Trump has sounded like a populist. He sounded like Elizabeth Warren on the drug industry. But I think for the banks, yes, I think they've gotten a lot cozier with this administration. Again, we may see Dimon issue some criticism, but I think that the relations are surprisingly good right now.
If you look at the numbers, they're pretty startling. Bank profits hitting a record $59 billion in the last quarter of 2018. We know J.P. Morgan's going to kick off earnings season on Friday with a number of other banks. Could those numbers actually wind up riling up the public and increase calls for more regulation?
It could, sure. I mean, the banking industry has always been a villain with the public. Their polling numbers are always pretty low. And when you look at the record profits, when you look at executive compensation, which is astronomical for ordinary Americans, yeah, I think they will be a target. But again, Alexis, I don't see any punitive legislation that could affect the industry anytime soon.
I think everybody's waiting for what's expected to be the big showdown today, possibly between Jamie Dimon and Congresswoman AOC. Are we back to the point, you think, where the banks now represent everything that's wrong with Wall Street to a certain segment of Americans?
Yes, and I'm sure AOC will make that point. But the Democrats, I think, my personal opinion is that in the last couple of months, the Democrats have maybe overplayed their hand. I think the banishment of Amazon from New York may backfire on her and many other progressives. I think talk about socialist programs that can't possibly be paid for will backfire on them as well. Ironically, what many progressive Democrats have done is give Donald Trump a foil that he's going to use very aggressively during his re-election campaign.